Hey everyone, I am Paste Magazine TV editor Allison Keene here with Paste editor-in-chief Josh Jackson, and we are counting down the best television of the week for the Paste TV Power List. Now, the Power List is voted on by Paste TV writers and editors and put together by our assistant TV editor, Amy Amatangelo, who keeps me from making Dark Crystal and Succession the number 1 and 2 picks every single week, even though I would argue they deserve it.
I think that's a fair thing for them to just own those spots. But
spoiler, we have a different 1 and 2 this week, but all of the shows on our list are really, really excellent, and we are excited to talk about them, and we're going to get right into it. So number 10, Lodge 49. Josh, this is one of your favorite shows. Tell us a little bit about why you like it so much.
Yeah, this was a big surprise last year, and we've talked about this on the Pace podcast, that, on paper, this is not a show that maybe would grab you. It's about a brother and a sister struggling in the wake of their parents' death.
In Long Beach, California.
And, a fraternal lodge with men and women. But most of the characters are a little bit older.
Which is unusual for a TV show.
This weird mystical vibe going on, and yet it is so charming. And
it's charming and surprising.
And I have fallen in love with the characters. Wyatt Russell is just very charismatic as sort of the dude junior.
Right.
Playing this surfer who just wants to clean pools for a living, and why is that so much to ask?
Yeah, the plot-wise, there's not a lot going on. There is some. It's not totally just sort of vignettes or a John from Cincinnati kind of show, but it's really a show that leans into that just feeling of experience, right?
Yeah, and that sort of magical realism, too.
Very much so, yeah. So Lodge 49, an underrated gem on AMC. Be sure to check that out. Number 9 is Righteous Gemstones, which is a show that has taken a little while for me to get into. I love Danny McBride. I really loved Eastbound and Down, and if you're a fan of that and Vice Principals, this is definitely one to watch. But Josh, what have you thought about the show so far?
I was a little undecided on those first couple episodes. There's a lot that I love about it, and I like you say, Danny McBride, I'm in just to see what he's going to do. His character is not the most compelling thing about the show to me, and the addition of Walton Goggins as Baby Billy is genius. So I'm more Walton Goggins, more John Goodman.
Yes, the Righteous Gemstones this week, we were talking about the 3rd episode. So the TV Power List is taking into account the episodes from the previous week. So this week, episode 3, yes, Walton Goggins is introduced as Baby Billy, which honestly, that should be enough of a selling point for anyone. John Goodman also gets a little more to do. He's the patriarch of the family. Danny McBride plays one of his sons. Adam Devine plays his youngest son, who's sort of a church worship leader, youth pastor sort of situation. It's really hysterical. And Edie Patterson is the sister.
Oh, she's great.
It's a wild and wacky show that I think is still sort of finding its tone a little bit, but when it works, it is really, really good.
Yeah, it's starting to lean more into the comedy, which it's a ridiculous show. So when that happens is when I've enjoyed it most.
And that's HBO Sunday nights. And number 8, Mindhunter returns on Netflix for season 2.
I have not watched all of the show, but I did love the first season. How does the season, I've watched a little bit, how does the season compare to people who've watched the first season?
First of all, it's sacrilege. You haven't watched season 2 since it's about Atlanta.
I know.
And viewers may or may now we're in Atlanta right now.
This is the very brand new Pace Studio ATL. We just moved in last week, and one of our first videos coming at you from Atlanta.
And already a betrayal that you haven't watched the second season.
Well, hey, wait a second. But it's not actually filmed in Atlanta.
This is true. Actually, it's filmed in Pittsburgh, despite ATL Wood being a amazing location for so many things that are filming now.
That are supposed to be Pittsburgh or somewhere else. Yeah.
Actually, that is a really fun. I can't remember what the movie is, but there is a movie where they fly into the Atlanta skyline and it just says Pittsburgh really big on there. So,
but Mindhunter is the reverse. Yeah, they needed
back.
One. Yeah.
Right. So, Mindhunter season 2 is in some ways similar to season 1. In other ways, it is focusing on different characters, I think, in really good ways. It's kind of pulling back from Jonathan Groff's character. And I love Jonathan Groff, but it's giving Holt McElhaney a chance to really shine as Bill Tench. And these are FBI agents who are developing the behavioral science unit at Quantico at a time when this is still a very new science in many ways.
Yeah, the idea of a serial killer is not
Right.
really a thing yet.
I think they call it a multiple murderer to start. And cereal still has the connotation of a breakfast food.
But the first sort of famous serial killers are of, modern American
Son
history.
of Sam and Ted Bundy and
Charles
Manson. And they all make appearances on the show as part of the narrative. It's David Fincher. It's very measured. It can be a little slow, but the Atlanta season is really interesting. It's based on the Atlanta child murders, which was a particularly heinous part of Atlanta's history in the 1980s. Is that correct?
80s, yeah.
And so the show is diving into that a little bit. And, this is its last week of eligibility on the Power List, but it has been on there for, since it premiered because it has been so solid.
Yeah, we give Netflix seasons, since they drop all at once, we give them, 6 weeks?
We give them 4 weeks. I've tightened it up.
Tightening it up. You don't want to drop them all at once. We're only going to pay attention. We're going to be blown through that in a month.
We're in the peak TV era. There's no room to keep streaming shows on here for longer than 4 weeks. And speaking of Netflix, actually takes us to number 7, The Great British Baking Show.
Which is a Netflix show that did not drop all at once. And I'm very appreciative of that, because
this is a very good point.
This is one I watch with my wife, and neither of us can get way ahead of the other on, we're going to watch this together once a week. It's not a big commitment.
This is one of the most joyous, sweetest shows on television. It is not your typical cutthroat competitive baking show. It is a competition, but the contestants are so kind to each other. They help each other. The hosts are sweet. The judges are tough but fair, and it's really a joy. And you touched on a really good point, actually, that it's coming out weekly this season for the first time in the United States. So usually what happens is we get it maybe 6 months, maybe even almost a year after it airs in England. Initially on PBS, it moved to Netflix, and now we're getting it weekly just 2 days, I think, after it airs in the UK. So for those who are afraid to Google any of the contestants because you'll get a spoiler, don't have to worry about it as much.
Nobody knows who won this one yet. Well, I guess the people.
Oh, right, the production, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I'm not a big reality TV guy. I'm not a big competition show guy. This is everything I don't like about those two genres. This sort of has subverted. There's not manufactured drama. It is, as you say, it's just a kind, sweet, very relaxing show. It's a soothing show.
It is comforting. So after you watch Mindhunter, then you can watch the Great British Baking Show.
The perfect dessert for Mindhunter.
Nicely done. Nicely done. We didn't even practice that. Number 6 on our list is Sherman's Showcase, which I think has its finale this week, or maybe just had it. It's a series on IFC that, if you're a fan of shows like Documentary Now, it's a riff on Soul Train, American Bandstand, that kind of thing, and is evidently hilarious. I have not had a chance to check it out yet, but our comedy editor, Garrett Martin, raves about it. And so
what I've seen I thought was very funny. I think we're living in a good age for sketch comedy and sort of a diversity of sketch comedy where it's not all just the same. This is a little bit of a hybrid where it's a fake show, but it feels like they're sketches, but they tell a bigger story, and
so there's a connectivity to it. So number 5 on our list, we have had an entire podcast on this. Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance.
Dark Crystal. I think our Dark Crystal 2 biggest fans right here. Right.
I have tried really hard to turn Paste into a Dark Crystal fan site, and Josh has enabled this.
Fully on board with that.
And it's been, we're really lucky to have this show. There's a lot on paste.com about it that we've written. We've done the podcast. We interviewed the writers last week or the week before. And there's so many great things to say about it. But honestly, the bottom line is just, it is the most unique show on television. It is told through the sacred art of puppetry, the ancient art of puppetry.
The ancient art of puppetry and puppetry within puppetry.
It's a fantasy epic, the one that we have been waiting for, I think, for a long time.
It is a fantasy epic, and that's the point I wanted to bring up, is that, I love fantasy. I love reading fantasy. I love watching fantasy. We've had so many great fantasy movies. Television has not done a great job. We had Game of Thrones was the big one. And I think people rallied around that as, okay, we accept that something can be genre and we will, if it's well done, we'll embrace it. And
so embrace this, people, because I need a season 2.
It is wonderful, epic fantasy. It's a bizarre concept when you just look at it on paper,
Yeah.
but it has surprised me.
And for those of you who have not seen the movie or have forgotten the movie or were scared to death by the movie as a child, it is not essential that you watch it before the show. This series is a prequel, which I think helps too to sort of introduce people to this world because it's so vast and interesting.
It's very true to the original while not, that 80s sort of slow pace on, never-ending story kind of pace.
Right.
It has that, whereas the TV show has a more modern vibe.
It's more
to it.
dynamic
It is
in a lot
much
of
more
ways,
dynamic. There's so much going on in every little corner of every frame. There's little creepy crawly puppets coming to life and making this
Everywhere,
world realized.
And it's not scary, but it is a little scary. I was scared by it. So it's family friendly, but to a certain degree.
Brutal. I've had people ask me, "Oh, is this okay for my 5-year-old?" And I'm like, "If you want them scarred for life, sure."
It's puppets, but it's not for kids.
There's torture scenes. There's brutal deaths. There's it's.
Right. But it is also joyous and charming.
It is so charming and joyous. And, I watched it with my son. He's 15, and he loved it. And we had a great time watching that one.
So number 4 on our list is On Becoming a God in Central Florida, which is on Showtime.
I just started watching this, and I binged
And you love it, right?
Yeah. Kirsten Dunst is so good in this role.
She's on another level here. I mean, truly. As so Kirsten Dunst plays Crystal, who is essentially someone. I don't want to give too much away. I didn't know a lot about the series coming into it, and I think that there's a spoiler in the first episode that's best left.
Oh, absolutely.
Just that, a spoiler. So suffice to say that she is. This takes place outside of Orlando in the late 1980s, early 90s. She is getting embroiled with this pyramid scheme called FAM, and she's on the outside of it sort of trying to take it down in a lot of ways. It's very complicated in that sense, but the show itself is smart, emotional, funny. She is just outstanding in this and deserves an Emmy. I mean, just for everything she's doing.
And it touches on something. So many, more and more TV shows are sort of addressing this, like a character that's just struggling to get by. I mean,
yes,
you've seen it in shows in the past, like The Wire. Lodge 49 addresses this in great ways. We'll get to another show in a couple spots here that addresses it in great ways.
Right.
But it is. She's a
paycheck
young mom.
to paycheck.
Just trying to actually, there's a couple more on here that kind of deal with
that's
that.
true.
And then one that's the exact opposite.
And in fact, let's go ahead and
let's go ahead and get to the exact opposite.
Our number 3 this week is Succession on HBO, which might be the best drama on television right now,
or the best comedy. I'm not sure.
That's a fair point. And actually, if you haven't watched Succession, you think it just looks like a very boring prestige drama. It is essentially a comedy. It's a very dark satire.
It is a satire of the billionaire class and the ways in which people get corrupted by that much money and that much power.
And what they're willing to do to keep that money and power. So the episode that we're talking about this week specifically is episode 5 of the second season. And I wrote an article on the site about how the show uses humiliation essentially as its currency. This is a show that the creator is Jesse Armstrong, who did Peep Show, if you were a fan of that. And if not, I highly recommend watching it. But that very British cringe comedy is what Succession just truly relies on. And
it's like a straighter version of Veep almost.
Yes.
That Iannucci kind of.
Very much.
There is that humiliation and insults and taking people down a notch and people abusing the power they have and all these things that are through everything Armando Iannucci's done in The Loop and Veep and
as our own Shane Ryan coined the term "new cynics."
New cynics, yes,
for that group of writers because it's exactly what they are.
It's an American show, but also very British.
Very British, and I think that works. That darkness that they bring to it works really well and makes it so unique.
It's just such a scary look at media in America right now.
There's one episode that horrified us in media. More than maybe anyone else. It was terrifyingly accurate. But so speaking of authenticity, the second show on our list, The Deuce, which has returned on HBO. And
The
It's in its
1980s.
the 1980s.
The mid 1980s now.
It has taken a time jump. It is in 1985. It's the show is in its third and final season. It comes from David Simon and George Pelecanos, who worked on The Wire and many other great series, by the way, that I think have really flown under the radar, like Generation Kill and so many. Treme. I was like, just on the tip of my tongue. Treme. But the Deuce looks at the rise and regulation, essentially, of the porn industry, and it bases itself in New York, in Times Square, before it was being cleaned up, essentially, and what that meant, and all of the players there. And you've got the mob, you have prostitutes, you have, but it's interesting because it's not a show that leans into that in sort of the way that maybe an early 2000s HBO show might do. It is really just telling, like you said earlier, these stories of people who are just trying to make it, right, and just get by, and what that means.
And like The Wire, each season of this so far has been very different. It's tackled very different aspects of the same community, and it
through
also,
different time periods,
and it also, most of the Wire characters seem to be popping up.
You'll
in this.
You'll recognize quite a few actors if you watch The Wire and Treme, but Maggie Gyllenhaal is the true star of this show, and she deserves an Emmy for the Emmys for everyone. Everyone deserves an Emmy.
You get an Emmy.
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Speaking of you get an Emmy, you get an Emmy.
That takes us right to our number one.
It does take us right into our number
on
one.
On the Oprah Network, OWN, David Makes Man, a truly outstanding new show from the writer of Moonlight, Terrell Alvin McCraney. And this fourth episode, called Gloria, changes the format up a little bit. Usually it's about a school kid in the outskirts of Miami, and he's sort of in this neighborhood where he's trying to escape in a lot of different ways. He is a super smart kid. He's getting pulled into the drugs and the drug running of the neighborhood, but he doesn't want to. It's just really intense and complicated and beautifully filmed.
Yeah, I approached this almost with trepidation. Like, it felt like, okay.
TV vegetables?
It did feel like TV vegetables coming into it, and I can't wait to watch the rest of it. It is one of the most beautifully shot shows on television right now. We talked about Perpetual Grace a few weeks ago on the podcast, and that is also so cinematic. But this is so lyrical, and if you loved Moonlight, it's got that feel of just the space for this story and this place, and it captures a project in Florida.
Current day, and just and so this fourth episode, Gloria, specifically takes the time to tell the story of David's mother, played by Alana Arenas, who is so good. She is so outstanding. She's so charismatic, and just like you can feel the struggle that she has to try to make things right for her kids, but at the same time, everything in her life is falling apart. And what the show does so beautifully and horribly at the same time is show us her dreams and aspirations visually, and then cutting back to the reality of what is happening around her.
There's a scene set to a Janelle Monáe song where she's lip syncing at this party, and it's fabulous.
It really is.
It's
really
fabulous,
is.
And then it's heartbreaking, and then it's this show. It is a wonder. I really hope people discover that. I know it's on the.
If
it's
you have
the first
cable,
thing I've ever watched on the Oprah Network.
And Queen Sugar is also very good. It's also on there. But if you have cable, you probably have OWN. So check and see. But
I found out that I did.
So there you go. Check out David Makes Man, our number one show for the Power List this week. And that's it for this week. There's so much great television. Those are our picks for the best of it. Join us next time here from the Pace Studio in Atlanta.
All right. And may all your TV shows get another season.